I've come across the following question a lot. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And my conventional answer to this used to be, well, do you know MMA? And if they say yes, then I would go on and say, well, do you know the ground part of MMA? That ground fighting. If they say yes again, then I said, yeah, that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so you know it. Okay, so I'm a little ashamed to admit that, but after a while I just got lazy and didn't want to get into depth about explaining what it was. It's just too big, it's too long, and there's too many feelings involved. I attribute that purely to laziness, and the laziness probably stems from a place of disgust towards people that don't know what a BJJ is. This secretly also stems from a place that still feels a little bit ashamed to have dedicated my life to some obscure sport that nobody knows about, that involves two adults getting uncomfortably close on the mats. A lot of sweating, hugging, and choking. So much choking so that you could say it's downright masochistically homoerotic and weird. I mean, try it. Go ahead. Try to explain to a normie what it's like to do jiu-jitsu. Show them pictures of shirtless men laying in each other's arms and tell them this is the pinnacle of self-defense ever created. This is the highest we will ever get with martial arts. It will let a smaller man or woman, no judgment, I mean, times have changed, submit a bigger man or woman. Again, no judgment. Without the use of strength. Tell them, so full of passion, and don't you dare make it sound like a cult. Which sermons you have to attend daily to grow in rank, to be a bigger part of the core, and ultimately open up your own chapel and start your own sermons. This is the reason I embarked on this journey. For you see, I don't feel I have done BJJ justice in the past years. I have not given it the love and respect it deserves. I have been quietly participating in these ceremonies, but never have I outwardly announced my faith. And it's so here I am. Acceptance at last. I, Giulio Vinci, do the most efficient, amazing martial art in the world with the best community ever. And it is just slightly cultish. And it is just slightly questionable about its sexual orientation. But it's all the fun I need. This is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How it came to be, why it exists, and what it is. Episode 1. Hope you enjoy it. Stay sexy. Another thing that I have to do, that I always forget. Well, no, I don't always forget. I just don't know how to bring it. And that is, I want to thank my sponsors. First of all, I want to thank Browse for giving me the clothes I need to do the job that I want. Basically, they are supplying me with with amazing gear. That's what I want to say. So a big shout out to Browse. I love their stuff. It sits wonderfully, and it looks cool too. It's kind of a pride. I have pride wearing it, although I know where it comes from. I'm still proud of it. I know what black magic shit they do to it too. I now know what kind of black magic shit they do to it to make it so good and so light. Has fairy blood in it. It's amazing. No, I'm all jokes aside, it's really good quality, high quality stuff that just sits perfect. I started with one gi, one rash guard, one shorts, and now I'm slowly turning my whole wardrobe into brow stuff. I'm so happy that they don't sell pants and shoes and underwear and stuff like that, or else I'll be a walking billboard for them. And it's that fast. That's how fast you lose and sell your soul out to a brand. But if it's a good brand, I mean, fuck it. I mean, I love it. I don't care. I'll be a whore. It's fine. But they do have also a really sensational program, which is the Browse Foundation, digging wells up in Pakistan. It's supplying people with water. It's fantastic. And I actually met the owner of Browse, and he himself goes over there and digs holes, which is it's just good to hear that somebody like a CEO does that. It just warms your heart in every way. So definitely thank you, Browse, and thank you for believing in this, and thank you for setting this up, and thank you, Browse Europe especially, which I'm the most in contact with. They're just fantastic. And thank you, Kaizen League. Kaizen League. This is a good one. This is also jiu-jitsu related, so I'm trying to keep my sponsors at least thematically in line. And that is Kaizen League. We're bringing out some of the best events out there. You might hear my voice come by in some of the commentary, because I'm the one doing the commentary. So if you hear me say stupid shit, yeah, that's me. That's me. But that's because I get too excited with the beautiful fights they set up. And the camera work is out of this world. It's just fantastic. So I wanted to thank these both. And Kaizen League will have a championship coming up soon, 7th of October, and it's going to be amazing. A tournament with some special fights coming at the end. It'll look fantastic. It'll be fantastic, and it's going to be so much fun. And I hope to see as many of you there, and I hope that as many of you can see me there as well. And this is it. This was the part of me promoting stuff, and now we're going to get into the juicy things. Hey guys, welcome to the episode Cauliflower Philosophy on the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I guess it took so long for me to make this because I did a lot of study in this, and the first step, that's the most difficult one, because I did not know where to start. And now I do, but I'm still very tentative about it. And it all starts in Japan, of course. For those that know a little bit of the history, it does come from judo. Only, I mean, how far back should I go to give you a intelligent view of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is and how it came to be? And I do have to then include how judo came to be, in a sense. So I will make a very short introduction about how judo came to be, and then follow through the timeline of things. Now, I am aiming to make it so that the timeline is not necessarily based on perfect dates. I do know the dates, but that's not my focus. My focus is painting you the picture around where these creators, where these geniuses, where these martial artists have been, and what is the period they are in, and what are the things that are going on that might have shaped their mindset to do what they are doing and to become what they have become. And the story starts with Jigoro Kano, and I'm pronouncing that probably horribly, but that's fine. It's I'm pronouncing it the Brazilian way, how I was taught it the whole time. Jigoro Kano. I love it. And he's an amazing human being. Created Kodokan Judo, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of where this man was born into. And for that, I'm going to have to explain a little bit of the history of Japan. So we're going to take a couple of steps back into how the Meiji Restoration came to be. Now, the Meiji Restoration is very important for this because Jigoro Kano was born in the middle of it. Now, around the 12th century, let's say, Japan had a lot of wars, and the warring class was, of course, the samurai, and the samurai then at a certain point got organized, and they had a little dispute, let's call it that, with the then emperor, and the emperor was turned into a figurehead. That's it. He was just to be a figurehead, and then the era of shogunates began. And shoguns and daimyos everywhere, they were trying to... daimyos were everywhere trying to seize the power so that they could be called shogun over all of Japan, of all of the area they were in. Now, shoguns are kind of like what we would compare to this day to be military dictators or military figureheads, or people that were truly in power, but they were all militaristically involved in a way, right? They were all samurai, they were all fighters, they were all warriors at the time. And the daimyo were the guys under the shogun that had their pieces of land, that had their castles, that had everything like that, and they had their area and land of control with the peasantry at their disposal, their farmers at their disposal. So this is an interesting period, and it all comes to a head kind of when Tokugawa Ieyasu, he finally restores peace into Japan. How does he do that? The face of war changed around that time because Japan made their first contact with Europeans, and Europeans brought two things, and they brought Christianity, that was important, and they brought matchlock rifles. They brought rifles, which changed the way that the samurai fought at that point, and that helped Tokugawa Ieyasu a lot with creating some sort of peace and some sort of unity within Japan, which was very interesting. So he took over, and the moment he took over, he basically closed down Japan, and that was an interesting thing that happened. That was the Tokugawa period took 200 years, so it was a lot of successions that came after that. So it was a very powerful and very peaceful time, but it was also a time where tensions built. It was 200 years of peace and 200 years of building tension. Now, something that is important to remember is that this period in Japan, there is a class system. It is shogun, daimyo, samurai, then I think artisans, farmers, and merchants. So that's the order of things. And whatever you're born into, that's what you are. That's it. There's no social movement going on. And this is a period of so much peace that the daimyo and the samurai, they didn't have really much to do at that time. And the merchants in peacetime is a wonderful time for merchants. They thrive and evolve. So that started a little bit of the tension, or that's a little bit of the situation in that era. Farmers and peasants, and they literally stayed the same, and they really did go through the hardships of being outside the big cities where most of the money was made. In that period of time, there was a lot of closing the doors, or closing the harbors completely, especially after the successor of Ieyasu, Tokugawa. His son took over, and his son was even worse. He really closed down everything. He just made one deal, and this is very interesting. He made a deal with the Dutch, and he said there was a revolt going on from the Christian farmers, and Tokugawa's son asked the Dutch to quell that revolution that was going on. And that already shows a little bit of the contact with the Netherlands and Japan in the beginning of this let's say that the beginning of judo going around the world. There's already a little bit of contact going on there, so there's a little bit of Dutch influence in this game. And the Dutch, in return, they got the chance to keep trading with Japan. Now, we skipped then this whole 200-year period, and then there is around if I'm not mistaken, around the 1850, something like that. The Americans just came out of a war, out of the Opium War with China, and they had a massive success at that time. They got a lot out of it. And one of the things that then happened was they still have an industrialization, or they still have a industrial revolution going on back at home. And they decided to look at Japan, which caught their attention because Japan has a lot of coal reservoirs and a lot of whales, which gives them a lot of resources to grow their industrialization. So America went over there in a very American way, I must say, and was showed up with 4 warships and said, look, we need to talk to the shogun. And they were very, very insistent on talking. And the commander there was Matthew Perry, and Matthew Perry really wanted to talk to the shogun. He said, in other words, either you open up or get ready for war. I'll be back next year. And of course, I'll be back with more ships. So Tokugawa Ieyasu, which was the last Tokugawa, let's call him that, at that time had the following problem. Like, either I open up to the Americans or I die. So it's either shame or death. And this is the thing. He decided to work with the Americans and sign treaties with the Americans, but not only with the Americans. He signed treaties with the Russians. He signed treaties with the English. He signed treaties with the French. Like, it was impossible to keep from letting Europe and the European and the West enter Japan, because Japan was just stopped in time for 200 years, where they didn't let any foreigners come into the country at all. And that meant that in a lot of things, Japan had fallen behind. They had fallen behind with industrialization. They had fallen behind with war, especially war tactics and war weapons and all these things, which are very, very important for the growth of a nation, just were left behind and didn't grow at all. So at the end of this, what did he get? Because he gave up, because he decided to run, or he decided to sign the treaties and chose shame in the eyes of a lot of Japanese, the samurai class, and a specific samurai class in the south of Japan, they decided from, like, we're not okay with this. I mean, Japan is sacred soil. We shouldn't be able to give it like that to the Westerners. So revolution and revolt started, and against the shogun, and a lot of daimyo were not happy with that, because there were very honorable people, of course, and having your shogun bow down to the Westerners in that way is not a good thing. So they smelled blood in the water, and they took advantage of that, and then the revolt started. And the samurai said, well, you can't do this without having the emperor evolve. And remember, the emperor has been a figurehead for all this time. That's all. It's since the 12th century, and now all the way up to the 18th, 19th century. He like up until 1870, something like that, he was basically still a figurehead. And but the samurai pushed on, invaded, and eventually the shogunate fell. And in place of that, the Meiji Restoration was set. But the Meijis, they needed the emperor they put down was 14 years old. I mean, the power didn't lie by him; it lay literally in his cabinet, or the Meiji cabinet. Restoration is what we should call it. And those were the people that actually had influence over what was going to happen in the future of Japan. And it is exactly in this period of time, because I know you're not here for only the history. It is exactly in this period of time that Jigoro Kano was born. He was born in 1860. So he got all of this Meiji Restoration and the change from the old class shogunate into this new industrialized world that speaks English, that wears suits, that has cars, that has all these technological advances in the world. And on the other side of the other half of his life, or the other very close part of this life, was still that shogunate era. And now in this shogunate era, or this era where the emperor was disposed, there's a lot of, and now I'm focusing only on the jujutsu part. There's a lot of jujutsu is growing a lot. War is happening the whole time. So there's a lot of schools for studies of war, studies of movement. And one of these studies is yaware, or jujutsu, or Japanese jujutsu. So there were many different jujutsu schools, all specialized in very different things, all throughout this Tokugawa era. And thriving, of course, because they were well respected. And all of them had specialities in little different things, like armed combat, of course, like everybody had the sword, pole, horse combat, all of these, bow and arrow. There's still schools in bow and arrow to this day. There's still jujutsu schools to this day, as a matter of fact. But there's many others all around there with different little things. And there's specific jujutsu schools that were also dealt with combat, but unarmed combat. And the idea of these schools were how to fight without a weapon, how to fight with a smaller weapon, how to incapacitate or kill your opponent, how to, and this is very interesting, there was also the form of how to secure your opponent, so how to capture and release your opponent. These are very interesting little things that were happening at the time, and very interesting schools. Now, there's not much information on them, but there is enough. There's enough books that actually portray techniques of holding down, throwing, striking, without striking, controlling on the floor. Very interesting to see these pictures and see these things happening. Now, Jigoro, being born in that era is something that does give a little bit of an insight of what he was thinking. I mean, born to a traditional family, and his father was a very, very forward-thinking man, in the sense that he came from a long line of priests, Shinto priests, from a well-to-do family. This was not a poor family. This was a well-to-do family. And the father worked for the government and worked for the Meiji government, where he enlisted himself. So there wasn't much resistance on the part of the family to work with the new Meiji Restoration government, because I do believe that they see a lot of the benefits with industrialization and everything that happened at that time. That influenced his mind, of course. Especially one other thing, his father did put him down to learn Chinese calligraphy and English, which is very interesting at the time. Not many people did that. And he himself, Jigoro Kano, was very, very interested in English. So much so that the books he wrote, and still to this day it's a little bit debated, has he written them out of secrecy or not, but he wrote them all in English. So the techniques, the very first techniques, the very first books, the Kodokan Judo, was written in English. So the passing down of his information, maybe for secrecy reasons, or maybe in a sense because he already knew that this was for the world. That's an interesting thing to think about. That the person that created judo, that created this amazing art, within his mind, and a sense, when you read his book, there's a sense of like, I want to do something to give back to the world. So the Westerners gave us all this beautiful technology and things. This is my present back. This is kind of a system that I give back to my people, and I give back to the world as a thank you. And it's a system of teaching, and it's a system of martial art, of course, and there's so much more to it. And this is something we're going to look into in the next episode, because I promised myself I'm not going to make these episodes huge or long or big. I'm going to make them just long enough so you can enjoy. So for the next episode, we're going to look at how Jigoro Kano came to do martial arts, where he did it, and how he started evolving as a teacher, which is a very important aspect. And then we go deeper into the philosophy of what he's doing and how it got into the world. And it's an amazing story from a very impressive genius of martial arts, and I love recounting it, and I loved reading about it, and I hope you guys can enjoy it as much as I did. I'll give you a little sneak peek. So he was born in 1816, learned a lot of calligraphy in English when he was younger, and then afterwards he was given the ability to, or given permission by his parents to go study English at the Tokyo School of Foreign Languages. And this is kind of a predecessor to the Tokyo University. It is the Tokyo University, and he got there as a 14-year-old, so a very, very young boy, 14, 15 years old. And of course, this does sound like the story of every single anime you've ever heard, and every single martial arts movie you heard. So 14 years old, gets into school, everybody else is bigger and stronger than him. It is quite literally like that. And he was very small. He's a little bit, he's a spit over 5 foot tall, which is not very tall for those that count in centimeters. And he was fascinated from the beginning of learning how to be more powerful than those around him, and wanted to have a way to defend himself and a way to fight back against these much bigger first years kids that were studying there with him. And that is one definite driving point. I mean, I think every single martial artist has this. We never start. It's rare to see that somebody starts fighting for the sake of fighting. It's always, there's always a reason there. Like, I want to get stronger to defend somebody, or I want to get stronger to defend myself. I want to look better or feel better about myself. And there's very few of us that actually are. When we look at it, we are like, okay, this I want to do because I feel, I don't know. I think the calling is always there, or the interest is always to do something like that, because you could do a bunch of other sports, of course, but there's always this little thing where, like, I wanted to do this to be stronger. I wanted to do this to be more powerful. I want to do this to feel better about myself. And it's interesting to see that the creator of judo had these same little struggles of, like, I'm doing this to defend myself because I've been bullied at school, basically. And creating this amazing martial art, judo, that came from Japanese jiu-jitsu, that came from Iwari, and that eventually led him to teach students, his own students, create his own school, and then send his students all over the world, including to Brazil, where it got in contact with the right family, and it grew up there to be what we now know as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the sport that we love, and one of the fastest growing sport to this date. It's amazing. With having told you this and having given you a little bit of a sneak peek of what is yet to come, I hope to hear from you soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And stay sexy. Os.